am live. Cool. Turn this on. Oh, that's better. We will begin shortly. Testing. 1, 2. Oh, nope. Let me angle that correctly. Okay. I think we are good here. Got these levels. Gotta check my levels. You know, I used to be a DJ at a radio station in college, so I used to be really good at that. Checking levels, making sure I don't peak, get into the red zone, but that was a long time ago. So I lost a lot of that. A lot of that skill. So I'm just gonna set these windows over here. Oh, I should have pinned that, but okay, I didn't. So I don't need to do that. Okay. I was debating using a higher. I got a GoPro, but the thing about these, the reason why advanced cameras are good is because they have options. They can allow you to adjust lighting, and you got all these settings, but you got to learn how to use all that stuff. and that takes a while. As opposed to like a lot of cheap stuff that just does all that for you, but it doesn't do a good job doing it, but it does it all for you. So that's the thing with the GoPro. It has a bad color balance because it's just doing it automatically. I gotta tell it to, but that's gonna take me a good hour to learn how to do something like, forget that. And then I just still gotta deal with the audio issues. I'm just, stalling some time, letting so a few more people can come. So I'm just filling some air. So we'll get started here. This is the Black Ponder. Hello, my name is Neil Trotter. I am the host of the program. Black Ponder is a YouTube philosophy channel. We talk about philosophy texts, and I read some of the dialogue and some of the texts in the book, and then we talk about it. And we talk about philosophical themes. It's fun, but sometimes we do live streams too. That's a newer feature of the channel. Trying doing live streams to level up my philosophy game, having conversations with the public, whether it be online or offline. But that's a part of philosophy, right? You can't just be talking at people. You gotta be talking with people too. You gotta have conversations with people. That's a huge part of philosophy, which is kind of missing. It's a lot of lecturing, a lot of sermons, a lot of one-directional conversations, but it's not a lot of two-way stuff. But, philosophy is all about that dialectic. So today's topic is nostalgia. What is nostalgia? Why is nostalgia such a thing with people? Nostalgia is such an integral part of media. Has it always been? Particularly these days, but maybe that's always how it's been. The idea of nostalgia. And why does it give us happiness, or does it give people happiness? I think generally that's what it is. What about people who've, just things to talk about? Just bumped into my head. We have nostalgia for eras. I remember, for example, I have a friend who, we were talking about the 90s, and I grew up in the 90s. I'm like, I love the 90s. And he said, I hate the 90s. I'm like, really? Why do you hate the 90s? And he was like, well, I was in prison, like, all of the 90s. I'm like, okay, that's a good reason. So he doesn't really have some nostalgia for the 90s, right? So nostalgia is different for each person in terms of what they feel, the era where they derive their passion or their joy for the past. But it's very interesting to think about these things. What I like to do is I like to, first of all, let me adjust the level so I don't stop peaking the microphone. Let's do that. So what I like to do, I still got to turn it lower. Turn it lower. Okay, that's good. I like to just share some anecdotes, some personal examples from my life, because nostalgia is really, I get a lot of joy from nostalgia, and maybe that'll spark some conversation. And I just try to figure out, why do I get joy from nostalgia? It's just interesting. I think it was like the early 2000. Well, no, it was the late 2000 knots into the 2010s. There was this huge 80s revival, right? Do you remember that? Just everybody was getting into the 80s, the 1980s. It was just not, the new wave, and remember that time, right? And it was just a great music was into it. Then we had like television shows, and all types of media was getting into the 80s, and it was particularly the 80s. And that was just, and when I was a young adult, I just noticed that for myself. But it was, there are many parts in time frames where people get obsessed with different eras, right, from the past. So it wasn't just the 80s. I just remember it. For me, it was the 80s that people were just like really clinging on to. So let me give you like an example, right? I got this. This is actually my wife's book. It's Paper Girls. Now I'm using a ring light, so we got the reflection there. Remember, I don't know if you're into comics. So there was a time when comics, just superhero comics, were kind of at this all-time low. This was like before the MCU, the Marvel universe, and all that was the multiverse, and all this like superhero movies were like really big. That was like just getting started. This was like kind of around the era of the Christopher Nolan Batmans, or like maybe the Spider-Man with the three parts. I forgot the guys. Tobey Maguire, that Spider-Man. It was that era, and then they had those X-Men movies where Halle Berry was Storm. It was that era, and Hugh Jackman was Wolverine. And so you had these superhero movies that were like okay, but they were like not okay. Although the Batman movies, they're pretty cool, right? The Christopher Nolan's Spider-Man movie, the first one was good, but the X-Men movies, right? But now, like, superhero movies are huge, right? But back then, like, a lot of superhero comics were not really going anywhere. So a lot of indie or comics were like exploding back in those days, right? And a lot of like comic books that didn't have to do with superheroes, the traditional superheroes, were like getting big. This is when like The Walking Dead was at the comic book. Remember now, Walking Dead started off as a comic book, and they would have single issues. It was that era when those comics. I remember there was another one. What was it called? Saga. That was the one. Saga was huge. I remember it was about Starcross. It was like a space opera take on Romeo and Juliet type of thing. It was all types. Y, The Last Man. That was another one that was huge. And another one was Paper Girls. Right. That was a big one. And this is like an omnibus or whatever. It's like one of those like collections. And if the thing about Paper Girls was like it was riding that 80s train where in the 1980s they came out with a lot of movies where it was about young youths, sometimes maybe adolescents, or maybe like preteens, right? And they would go on an adventure, and it would be kind of like a coming of age story kind of thing, like the Goonies, right? Or the Sandlot, which I think that might be like early 90s, but same kind of thing. Or maybe the 80s. Sandlot. What was that other one with the little boy from Star Trek? Stand By Me, I think it was called. Yeah. That was another one. Right? There was a lot of these movies where they had the little boys that were going on adventures, and they were finding themselves along the way. That was like classic 80s movies. And so, Paper Girls riding that train, right? And they got all the tropes, right? And I remember that was a very popular comic book. It was a hot thing. Well, hello, Cody. And then you're saying day-to-day life can be rough and unpredictable today and in the past. Nostalgia is kind of like rose-tinted glasses looking in the past, a buffet of the good moments. Yeah, none of the bad ones, right? Rose-tinted glasses. Is that what's going on? I wonder, the question I have is like, why do we have that for the past? I guess, and I guess because we're living it. And why don't we not do that for the present, right? I guess because we're living in the present. The past is already past, so we can kind of look back. It's like, well, it already happened, so we can ignore that, the bad parts about it. But it is a phenomenon, right? Yeah, I never really got into this comic. I remember reading the singles, and I thought the stories, it was a lot of, it started getting a little, that era was starting to get a little too 80s for me. I was a baby in the 80s. I was born late December 1984, right? So I don't really remember the 80s in my mind. I remember 1989 because I'm from the California Bay Area, and we had this huge earthquake. That's like my first memory. So I remember the last year. But even though I don't really remember the 80s, I guess because I watched a lot of reruns and stuff. And after a while, like, it's cool. I really like the 80s. I think the 80s are very fun. But they were starting to come out with these revivals and these media where it was just like, oh my God, can we just stop with it? And I think Paper Girl started getting into that realm. It was like, I think it's new for people it was cool for people who just didn't have a clue about the 80s at all. It's like fresh. But I'm like, man, this is a little too much for me. I really like the art. I remember I was reading this and I was like, the art is amazing, but the story is just too kind of. I mean, look at this. No spoilers. I'm not spoiling anything, but literally like an NES, Nintendo Entertainment System. That's like 80s right there. Yeah. You just see it, just constant throwbacks. Just see it some more. Of course. You got, what is that? Freddy Krueger. Just some guy dressed up as Freddy Krueger because, 80s. Friday the 13th, it's just like, But that's cool. Let me show you some more stuff. But I do find, so yeah, the rose, I receive enjoyment from recreating the past. I go to this video rental store. It's amazing. Like it's like, I was gonna say mom and pop. I guess so, but I would say they're a little bit more successful than mom and pop. They're kind of like pretty doing very well financially. But I guess they're very successful mom and pop. Called the Black Lodge. That's what they're called. And you can just rent actual like DVDs, right? And you don't. It's not just renting DVDs. You actually can walk in there and buy VHS tapes. It's crazy. VHS, and I'm like, dang. And I'm seeing the VHS tapes, and it's just, I get like a flush of good memories, because that's the medium I grew up on. I was before DVDs. I grew up on VHS tapes. This one, it's funny how I live in a community, an area where you'll just randomly see VCRs like just on the side of the road. It's kind of funny. I think last week I just saw a VCR on the side of the road. I have a VCR. I just found it on the side of the road. I just picked it up, plugged it in. I was like, oh, it works. Okay, cool. I'll use it. I mean, who wants them, right? I do, because I'm obsessed with the nostalgia. The owner, I think, the owner just gave, because I'm a customer, he's like, hey, you're a long-time customer, let me give you this. He just gave me this. Look at this. This is Hook. Remember, you may not. You might be too young to know. Hook is like a Peter Pan retelling, like Robin Williams, one of his like famous movies. He's Peter Pan in the movie, but he's like grown up and shit. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of weird too. It's like classic, like what did this come out in the 90s? I think. Let me see if I can see the year. 1992. Yeah, classic like 1992 entertainment, because it's kind of weird. You have Yeah, the Hook is played by Dustin Hoffman, the guy that was in The Graduate, and a lot of other. Julia Roberts is Tinkerbell, right? She's like grown, and there's there's the classic Rufio. I forgot his name. Let me see if it's in the back here. I'm just checking here. No. Of course, they're not going to give the people of color then credits. Oh, well. But he's cool. And then you got, you even got the guy that played Mario, the original Super Mario guy, Bob Hoskins. He's also the dude that was in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Right. The Mario movie that sucked. Right. But I must have watched this movie, I don't know, countless times as a kid, as a child. And I basically know it by heart now. And so I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'll watch that. And of course I'm watching it. And not only is the movie itself nostalgic, but taking out the video, right, putting it into the VCR, and pushing play. Right, first of all, you got to rewind it. Make sure you rewind it. And make sure it's at the beginning. Right. And just that feeling of, and of course, it's an inferior medium, right? So you can hear the flaws in the audio, where it's kind of stretched out. You hear all that, and it just makes me feel good. It's funny how the imperfections kind of give you a sense of joy because it's nostalgic. Sometimes you'll see a little static as the video runs. And it's not like DVDs, right? For many people, DVDs are nostalgic because who watches movies on DVD anymore? Barely anybody. People just watch stream on the internet. And oh yeah, I just bought this on Facebook Marketplace for $2. This is The Mighty Ducks Part 2, which is not a good movie. It's a Disney movie, but I like it because it just reminds me of my childhood, and I used to watch it with a friend, and it just reminds me of that. And these are those classic Disney video cases that are plastic, and you just even opening it up. And this is what I'm talking about, even the process of opening it up. Yeah, I heard there was this what you can do. I heard the tapes would sometimes the tape would get tangled, and you're able to flip it up like this, and you can actually straighten it out. I used to do that. So you could flip it up like that, and then you could put your finger in there and kind of wind it up. It's a very inferior format, but hey, I loved it. So there's that, man. It's just interesting. These things give you joy. So it's not just not only is it you're looking at the past and with rose-tinted glasses, but also it is looking back at the things that you used to do and getting joy from having those things, doing those things. Hello. All right.
How are you?
Okay.
Are you live?
Yeah, we live.
Can I give you a smooch?
Okay, you can join too.
What are y'all talking about?
Nostalgia.
Oh, I got some of that.
Oh, okay.
Are you worried about the dog?
Yeah.
Oh man, he's messing up stuff, huh? Oh man.
Sorry. Okay.
Ooh, Paper Girls and Hook.
Yeah, we're just talking about nostalgia.
Mighty Ducks. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Hi.
That's my wife. Yeah, and then another thing I like is vinyl records. because I'm a hipster. But why do I like vinyl records? So some people are like, well, it's just something about putting the needle on the record, and it's just the feeling of doing that. Gives a nice sound. For me, like, it's not really about the audio quality. That's not what it is for me. To me, it's like I get a feeling of nostalgia from using it, and to me, that's like better than having the best audio quality, which is strange. But it's all about what makes you happy, right? It's about what makes you happy. I'm definitely not an audiophile, although some audiophiles are into vinyl. They'll say it like, oh, vinyl is actually, the best. It has very warm sound. And I never really got into that whole debate or discussion of like vinyl sounds better or like, digital sounds better. Like I could care less about that, to be honest. It's more about just the feeling that you get when you play the music, because music to me is more than just how it sounds, like the quality of the sound. To me, it's a lot about the how it makes you feel. Right? And you can have some shitty sound and it can make you feel good, right? And then we got the Forerunner. Hi Neil, I love your channel with love and admiration from India. Well, hello from India. Cool. And then Cody says, I think nostalgia can better inform the present. There were things we did in the past that were joyful and we want to recreate that. Yeah, basically. Yeah. But then you say can better inform the present. Yeah, I think maybe the past can, like what I'm saying about music, where, there was a time, and I guess that we're still in it, but maybe not so much anymore. But I remember there was a time when the musical industry was obsessed with audio quality and production value, to the point where music it was becoming overproduced. And people were kind of noticing that. They're like, wow, this sounds like it was made in a laboratory. Like it was like very pristine, to the point where it sounds inauthentic. I think a lot of music from like 2000 knots and into, I think that actually started in the late 90s, but then it kind of kept going through the knots. And then finally, like what happened is, technology got cheap enough where you started having like people making music in their bedrooms, and people buying cheap equipment that were like old ass equipment from the past that nobody wanted, or they just went to Best Buy or some electronic store and just bought music development software and stuff, and they just made their own music, right? And it wasn't like the best quality sound, but it was, it had heart and soul, right? And I think now the industry is starting to understand, like, oh, okay, like production value isn't like the only thing we should be focused on, right? And I guess like in that way, what you're saying, I think nostalgia can better inform the present. Yeah, because if you can inform the present by saying, look, like we care more about. We don't just care about production value, right? In fact, something can be produced in not so good of a way, but it can still sound great. It could be great music. I'm into a lot of that type of music. I guess they call it lo-fi, low fidelity music. Bedroom pop is a lot of that. Yeah, so let me show you. I was just talking about records. I'll use this one. This is crazy. This is just nuts. This is what company does this? I forgot. Oh, Datadisc. Datadisc is a company. I think they're from a European company, and I think they're British, and they make soundtracks from old video games, and they put them on vinyl, which is kind of ridiculous, right? But it's awesome because this is Outrun. Outrun is like a classic video game, a racing video game in the arcade. I remember playing it in the arcade, and it's just like very 8-bit, meaty chip tune type of song. So it's like, why put that on vinyl? Right? Like, what benefit does that music have on vinyl, right? Because it was literally it was designed to be played digitally, right? The music wasn't designed to be, like, the original music file was not an analog file, it was a digital file, right? So what's the point? I know, so it's more, in this case, it is more about just the process of taking the record out and putting it onto the turntable and just playing it rapidistic. Look at this. This is like green or teal or whatever you call this color. And man, if you were into this type of if you remember this game, man, this game was the shit. It was just you were just cruising. You were cruising. You were just racing, and but you weren't really like it was low stress racing, right? It was more just like one hand on the wheel, just enjoying the scenery type of. It's laid back racing, right? And the tunes is very laid back, calm, a lot of tropical vibes, a lot of like Miami Vice type of tunes style. Like this says it all. They got a little print. It's just like, see, this is the feel you get when you play the game. If you play the game. Oh, here's another one. Like palm trees. Hello, palm tree. I mean, don't get the beach, the sand. I mean, this is California. I mean, that's where I'm from. It's just Cali. Where you at? And then Cody says, City Pop is some of my favorite nostalgic music. Like feeling nostalgic for, what is that? For something you didn't live. Sorry. I know what you're talking about, but we got this heart icon that's blocking text, so I'm going to have to open up a word to see what you typed. Oh yeah, that's right. It does that. So, color. Like feeling nostalgic for a life I didn't live. Yeah, that's right. So I'll put this back. But that's something else I want to talk about. Let me put this back. Yeah, there's a lot of parts to this vinyl. I think they call this the Moby strip or something like that. Okay. Yeah, along those lines, what you're talking about. Nostalgia for a life you didn't live. So one of my all-time favorite illustrators is Norman Rockwell. You know Norman Rockwell, maybe you know, maybe you don't. He's like very famous illustrator. Kind of was very big in the 1950s, 1960s in America. I have a book about him. Right, and I see his images, and I also get a rush of nostalgia. Why? I didn't live through the 50s or the 60s. But so it's interesting. Like, so nostalgia is more. It is more than just you reminiscing about the past that you lived through. It's like it's this timeless thing, or like there's this a feeling that nostalgia, like certain media can stir up into you, that like gives you this sensation of good feelings of the past, even though you didn't live during that time. Right? So nostalgia has that kind of effect too, which is fascinating to me. But let me show you some of my favorite images of him. Of course, he's like this is one of his most famous works, but this is more like this. I mean, this is really nostalgic. Right. Let me see if I can. How can I? Yeah, there we go. So I don't block my mouth so you can hear what I'm saying. Yeah, this is one of his famous works. This is about Ruby Bridges.
That's the name of the little girl.
Yeah. That she had to be walked into the school because this is when America first got rid of the separation of black people and white people, separate schools. But a lot of people didn't like that, so it was dangerous right, for her to go to school, right? Because people didn't like that, so that she had to be walked in by the National Guard, like the the department, the Justice Department in Washington, federal marshals had to walk her in because while she was walking in, there was lots of protesters who was very violent, so they had to walk her. This is like one of his most famous images. Right? I remember when I was a little kid, I saw this little girl on the Oprah show. She was a grown woman. That's how I learned about it. Oprah had her, and she interviewed her. She was a grown woman, and Oprah asked her, "What was it like?" And she was like, "I didn't know what was going on." And she said, "I thought I was in college. I thought that's what was going on. And like, weren't you afraid?" It's like, "Nah, I wasn't afraid. I just didn't understand what was happening." But, which was, that's good. Yeah. But yeah, that was crazy. But let me show you some images that actually spark some nostalgia for me. If I could. Oh, here's one. This is another one of his most famous images, right? This girl she's in trouble because she got into a fight. She got a bruised eye, but she's happy because she's like, I finally, I defended myself. I stood up for myself. I got in trouble, but I stood up for myself. Right? Maybe it's called Girl with a Black Eye, 1953. And it brings nostalgia. Maybe it's because I experienced something similar. Maybe that's why it brings some nostalgia. Let me see if I can find another one. But I didn't. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's because there's something we can relate to. This is another one of his famous images. What's it called? Girl at a Mirror, 1954. That's the year my mother was born. And it's about this girl she's reading beauty magazines and she's looking into the mirror in despair because she's like, there's no way I could ever look like these people. Which is, I guess that's kind of a universal type of feeling, huh? One of his famous images. Right. Maybe that's what it is. Nostalgic because we can all relate on some level. That's no. It's a boy. I think he's like his dad dresses up as Santa Claus. I think he found the Santa suit and he figured it out. He's like, wait, is my daddy Santa Claus? I don't understand. Oh, this is the full image. That's funny. And but I do. This is funny. I don't know why. What's it called? Babysitter with Screaming Infant, 1947. That's funny. What is it about these images? I don't know. Look at this one. This is awesome. Oh. This is a great image. What's it called? New Kids in the Neighborhood, 1967. So look who's moving in. This is 1967 America. Right. So again, Jim Crow is starting to get outlawed. So you got integration. Black people are starting to mix in with white people. Right. And so you got these black kids moving in, and the white kids are like, hello. Yeah, these are the type of things that would happen. But I guess you got that rose tinted glass look of it. Either way, it's a great image. Look how check this out. Look closely. The white kids have a black dog, and the black kids have a white cat. I know he did that on purpose. Right. He did that one on purpose. See, it's those type of little things that make art kind of cool. And hello, Darren Chibi. Finally caught you live. Yeah, I'm here. I'll just show you this to finish. That's the guy. That's him in a picture of him photograph. That's the guy. Yeah, cool artist. One of my favorites. Let's look at something else. Do I have anything else? Oh yeah, I was just gonna show you. Oh yeah. So like, nostalgic food. My wife asked to talk about nostalgic food.
Is that not a thing for you?
No. I'll try to think. I guess it could be. Is there any food that you're nostalgic for? In the chat? Yeah, I guess gumbo would be nostalgic food for me. Because that's what my grandma would make. Particularly, that's what she made for New Year's. I guess, she said, oh, that's a common thing my family did. That's what she would say. I'm like, okay. I guess that's what we do. But gumbo is a nostalgic food for me. I recognize the artist from Barnes & Noble bookstore. Don't remember his name. Great artist who did self-portrait. Yeah. There's Norman Rockwell is his name. Mm-hmm. Pictures for the American people. It's one of my favorites. Oh, gingerbread cookies for Christmas. That's what Benji says. Cool. Yeah, and so another thing I like to do is, I've been playing video games ever since I was a little kid. It's 4 years old, right? So video games are very nostalgic for me. Nowadays, you can just download games, right? Just like most things. Like, you could just download movies, you could download music. You don't need to have physical copies of things anymore. And then Darren Chibi says, milk was cereal when I was a kid. Okay, so there's some of that nostalgic food happening. Which is cool. But I still gotta have physical copies. Because it just makes me feel good. Now, I remember my wife was saying, like, which is a good point. She was saying, it's good to have physical copies because if you just have a digital copy of something, like, the company can just take it away from you, right? Because, if you read the fine print, when you buy a digital copy, you're not actually buying for a lot of times, you're not actually buying the copy of it. what you're doing is you're buying the right to view the media. Right? So you're not actually purchasing the privilege to own it or whatever, right? So they can just take it away at any time, right? But if you have the physical copy, then you got it. And that's a good reason to have it. But for me, it's like, yeah, that's important. But I just like just to have it just for basically nostalgic purposes. And then Darren Chibi says, actually, it's carrot with peanut butter as a kid. Okay, cool. Man, those are two things I hated as a kid. Carrots and peanut butter. But that's cool. That's cool. So yeah, I buy, like, when a new game comes out, I'll buy the physical copy. You know what's interesting about it though is a lot of times a physical copy will either be the same as a digital copy, or sometimes I actually find it is less than a digital copy. And that's how, when you go to the store and they might have it used or something. Because somebody's like, yeah, I don't want this. So a lot of times, like, I'll find, like, the physical copy will be cheaper than the digital. But this is a game I like. It's I'm just giving you an example of, and this is like, what is it called? Special edition, which, like, a lot. Some people care about that, but a lot of people don't. They're like, just give me the digital. But it comes with, and it's Japanese, but this is Shiren, the Wanderer. That's what it's called. It's like, it's a dungeon crawler. It's like a rogue. They call these roguelike games. Right? And it comes with a little art book, and I'm just showing you because that's what I like. I like when the games come with, like, physical objects. It isn't just like, and so the key here is, like, it's not just you have these items because they add value to the game. Well, they add value for me because it reminds me of the time when all video games were physical, and when you bought a game, you did get, like, maps and books and stuff like that. So it just brings me back to that era. It's not so much like, yeah, I feel good because I have more stuff. It's more like, yeah, I have this stuff that I'm transported back to when I was a little kid. Which is what I want. And it's just like a little art book. Right? That's all it is. Nice, beautiful art. Nice, beautiful art. It comes with the actual game, which is the same. I love these. This is Nintendo Switch. I love how it's just nothing. It's just like what a waste, right? It's just like, they could put something in here. Damn. It's just a little cartridge, and it's like, come on. Or maybe you can make the box itself smaller and just put more bonus material. That would have been nice, but no. Whatevs. Let me put this back. If I could figure it out. I have to wrestle with that later. And then Benji says, right, a real physical copy of the Super Mario 1, for example, was only a cartridge in the 80s, 90s. No downloadable at the time. It's true, I remember that. That was like the very first video game I ever played was Super Mario Bros. 1 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And then you say Baldur's Gate came with an awesome game manual, a big map too. Oops. Oh, it did? I'll never forget when you bought, when my mama bought me The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, the Zelda Part 3. Right. That game came with a instruction manual, which was essentially an art book. It came with a map of the game, like a map. It was a fold out. It was like a poster. It was awesome. It came out with a little secret tips and tricks, which basically spoiled the game. But you didn't have to. It would tell you, like, do not read unless you want to be spoiled. All that. They didn't use that term back then. Unless you want to, like, know the secrets, right? And it came with a lot of promotional material too, in terms of just ads for other games. But the ads were like little art booklets, which were great. You know, that's how you did ads. Right. It was a great package. You know? And the box itself looked nice. And then Darren Chibi says another nostalgia is DVD record store back in the 90s. Don't remember the store name. It was shut down decades ago. Yeah, we were just talking about that when I was talking about this, record store. I mean, DVD store, a rental store I go to called the Black Lodge. And I talked about how they the owner actually gave me this because he's like, "Hey, you're a good customer. Here's a VHS tape for you." I'm like, "Hell yeah!" But we talked about that. But that's cool. Yeah, a map for Link to the Past would be so right. Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, and then I remember you could turn. So you had the map of the world. You turned it around, and it was a map of the dungeons. I think it was the first 3 dungeons, and that was cool. But yeah, you speak about old ass games. I host an anime convention in California. It's called KyobiCon. Derek Jimmy knows about that. And we have vendors who sell anime and game merchandise. One of them was selling Super Famicom games, which is like the Japanese Super Nintendo. And I was like, I gotta have them. And you're selling them for like $5 each. Come on, man, I can't pass this up. Or Romancing Saga. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on. Like, these are JRPG classics. And they're in Japanese. Unfortunately, like, I kind of know a little Japanese, so I can play these games, right? I remember I used to play them when I was a teenager. And so, when I was a teenager, I was very, very fortunate. Because I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And there's so many cultures there. There's a large Japanese American population in the Bay Area. They have Japantown in San Francisco. They also have a Japantown in San Jose. Right, and you could go to the San Francisco Japantown and you can buy like Japanese language educational materials, like Japanese dictionaries and just Japanese textbooks, which I did. They weren't that expensive. I take the BART train. That was our public transit. As a teenager, just go there and buy it, and then go back home, and just you can download the game or emulate it in this Japanese. Because originally these games were not released in America, so they had no English translation. They had some fan translations. Some people would translate it, but they weren't paid. They were volunteers. It's all the translations were oftentimes nonsensical, so you would, so it was best to just play them in Japanese, fortunately, and so I would use a dictionary and play these games, and that's very nostalgic for me, playing those kinds of games in the Japanese language, and so I do that a lot. Why do I do that? I play Japanese. I play Japanese role-playing video games in their native Japanese language. I do that because it brings me back to when I was young, when I used to do that, and it makes me happy. It's totally a nostalgic thing. That's the only reason why I do. I'm surprised. One day they probably will. This is one game they had, Square Enix. Back then they were called Squaresoft. They haven't remade this game yet, which is kind of surprising. But I guess they're keeping this, for a rainy day, because they might already be ready to release that. But this is one that hasn't been translated yet officially. Right? So I remember playing this game, right? And now I got the actual physical game, which is awesome. It's all nostalgia for me, man. What could you say? That may come on. Plop that in. It's cartridge. You know, this is how the games used to look. You know, just play it. I already tested them. They work. I don't know what this is. This is okay. It's a little data card. That's funny. Has little stats of the monster in the game. It comes with the instruction manual. See, games used to come with instruction manuals, which were like little art books. That's why they were so cool. They're like little art books. But not anymore. And then, what's going on here? And Benji says, "Oh man, I'm at." Oh yeah, you are. I read that. And then Darren Chivy says, "Oh, I remember how Tower Records store back in the early 2000s always visited the store every Friday after work." Cool. Yeah, my older brother worked for Tower Records. Tower Records tried to sell anime on VHS tapes for a while, but I guess it was just too soon. It's funny now. Anime is like, it's American pop culture now. I mean, you can go to the American theaters and watch anime movies. It's crazy. I mean, you would just never have thought. But back then, they were actually, Tower Records were trying to sell anime to people, but people just was not interested. And so my brother would just, the manager would just give him the anime VHS tapes. Like, nobody's buying these. Here, you can have them. So he would take all this anime home. That's how I watched like Akira and Fist of the North Star, like all these, and Ninja Scroll and all these movies I shouldn't have been watching because they were like extremely violent and sexual. And I was like 9 years old or something, or like even younger. But that's my recollection of Tower Records. And then I remember, Cody says, I remember drawing the original Super Mario map from the manual. Oh, cool. See, that's what I'm talking about. And Darren Chibi says, Japantown in San Francisco is much bigger, more stores, and very interesting. Oh, it grew. Okay, cool. There's an annual cosplay gathering at San Francisco Japantown. Another plus. Well, I know there's a Cherry Blossom Festival. Is that what you're just talking about? Or maybe there's another one? I know the Cherry Blossom Festival. That's like a 2-week event, if I'm not mistaken. And then Benji says, the official cartridge. Yeah, that's a handful of Squaresoft games that need a proper remake and translation. Yeah, there's Bahamut Lagoon, and I think there's another one called Terranigma, or I think it's called Terranigma, I think. Something like that. Or Terragami, I forgot. But it's the sequel to Illusion of Gaia. They still haven't translated that one, which is kind of weird. You'll think there's a few others, right? Do you still remember those mini 1.44 mega floppy disks from the 90s? Okay. I mean, I remember floppy disks. Is that what you're talking about? Is that? Oh, that's what you. Okay. Oh, I'm sure they did. Yeah. I just remember the regular floppy disks. I've used that to play Oregon Trail. Actually, Oregon Trail I played on the bigger ones, where they had the computer with the green and black screen. Yeah, that's what I played that one on. And then you said, yeah, anime was new back in the days. Only imported DVDs from Japan. It's hard to find anime in the early 2000s. Okay. Yeah, it was. It was. Cherry Blossom, yep. That was the one. Yeah, Terranigma. Yeah, I played that. I beat that one using like a Japanese dictionary and like textbooks. You know, I mean, granted, like, you know, doing it that way, you like barely understand what you're doing, but hey, you're able to do it. Going to Exultar is gonna catch the replay. Love the show, great. Just gotta say, nostalgia ain't what it used to be. Okay, nostalgia ain't what it used to be. There are two versions of floppy disks: a standard size and a smaller size. Okay, I think I know. the one you're talking about. Nah, I know what you're talking about because they were the big ones, and then there were the smaller ones. Yeah, I remember now. So you're saying nostalgia ain't what it used to be? What? How did it used to be? Or how is it now compared to what it was back then? I think it's the same, is it not? I mean, maybe people are being nostalgic for different things, but are they really? I mean, we got vinyl. Oh yeah, I forgot to. I'll share a few of my vinyls. Actually, this is my wife bought me this for Christmas. Charlie Brown. I love this. This is like one of my favorite albums of period. I love this album. And it's vinyl. Charlie Brown is very nostalgic. Is it not? I mean look at that font. I mean, that's just a nostalgic font. Dude, I'm trying. No. You see it, fantasy. I mean, come on. That's like 60s. What's the name for that? I don't know. But this is a very nostalgic album for me. Even though, like, when did this come out? 1972. I wasn't born then, right? But, I mean, granted, they would replay this special, like, they play it every year. So if you're a little kid in the United States of America and many other parts of the world, this probably is nostalgic for you. Just play with the concept a little. Okay. My brother still has vinyl records and VHS tapes. Me too. And then I also listen to new music on vinyl. See, that's the thing. This is Tame Impala. Very new artist, right? It's actually not even mine. I think this is my daughter's album. But I love Tame Impala. I used to have the one Currents, I think that's the name of the album. That's my favorite one of his. But the Cockroaches got to it. I had like a little crisis. I had vinyl, but then cockroach infested and they destroyed a lot of them. And well, that was one of them. So devastating, but yeah, I'll buy new if I really like an album. I will buy it new in vinyl because I just want to apply the nostalgia to the new. I just want to add to that experience. And this is how nostalgia is kind of expansive, and it's more than just looking back in the past. It's kind of like you're applying the joy of your past to like new stuff to amplify the joy. I do that a lot, where it's like, okay, how can I make this new thing nostalgic? Right? Oh, I'll just buy the vinyl of it. And then it's just like 2 times the fun, right? And that's an interesting thing that you can do with nostalgia. You can apply nostalgic to new things. And so now you have this like dual dynamic of like retro new. Which you're seeing that a lot. Right? You're seeing this like retro, kind of like the Paper Girls is what I talked about. Like it's got a lot of new concepts in it, but it's also got a lot of old concepts. So they're applying the nostalgia to new stuff. So you kind of have this like this feeling of retro, but new, which often works. Sometimes it doesn't work, but oftentimes it does. That show Stranger Things was like that, right? That's kind of like the whole gimmick of that show. Was like something new but something old. Right. And then you got Darren. Okay, I'm behind here. Benji says that's a gem. I honestly play that album every holiday season. Me too. Haven't had a vinyl for it yet. They'd be the best. Yeah. One day I'm gonna be able to play that shit on piano. That's like on my bucket list. I want to practice it on the piano because I want to play those songs on the piano. Then, then I'll be like, that'll be the thing, right? And then Darren Chibi's, he still has Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder vinyl records from the 80s. Yeah, that's like my mama. Well, unfortunately, she didn't care. She doesn't care because she gave me a lot of those vinyls, which the cockroaches got too, which is too bad. But she doesn't. She doesn't, because my mama is like not. She moved on. She's like, yeah, I just listen to music on my phone now. It's fine. She like a lot of people. It's like, dude, just like use Apple Music. Like, it's easy. Yeah, but you don't have that joy, or like, you know, what my wife is. You don't own the music, so if Apple Music decides, yeah, we're gonna take this off, you're like, you're kind of screwed. And then Zoltar says, nostalgia longs for a refrained past, and I can imagine someone being wistful for an older version of everything, even nostalgia. Oh, okay. Being nostalgic about nostalgia. So it's like a framing, which that makes a lot of sense. Nostalgia is not so much a longing. Nostalgia is just a frame that you use to look at something. And then you can, you know, modern shows that use nostalgia, they're just telling a story with this like frame that the frame views things in this retro style. I see where you're going with that. And then you say Tomorrow's Dust by Tame Impala is all about nostalgia. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I think a lot of his music, the themes relate to nostalgia. That's true. Maybe that's why I like him so much. Like his music. The sound of a vinyl record sound much better than digital. Very close to live recording. Yeah, no, that's because it's analog, right? Because it's actually using you know, it's yeah. I wouldn't. Let's not go into the weeds of that. Let's not go into the physics of that, right? But yeah, that it does sound more, you know, physical. You know, if you look at it, the physics of it, yeah, it does sound more like an actual live recording. But then some people would argue, you know, some people who prefer like, well, I don't want it to sound like that. I want it to sound like they're recording in a studio, right? Because that'll give me the most pristine type of sound, and that's just personal preference. And then Benji that's a challenge, bringing the joy of past experiences to the new things. Yeah. Creating Proustian moments. Proust is a nostalgia champion. I was saying, I don't know. Yeah, I'll read Proust one day. There's some, I know people who are into Proust and they just like turn me away from Proust because they're just so, not, the word isn't pretentious, but it's just like, y'all are just way into that kind of that life. I'm like I'm not into it that hardcore. But hey, I'm in the VHS tape, so I mean, who am I to talk, right? But people who are into Proust, I'm like, man, you guys are like, y'all into that literary, like, what do they call it? What's it called? Romantic. I forgot what they call it. It's that aesthetic that has to do with literary aesthetic. It's too bad I can't think of the name, but yeah, it's an aesthetic, right? It's like a romanticism of like academia. Academia. What is it? Something academia. Oh well. Uh-oh. Yeah, sometimes that'll happen. Sorry if the stream cut out. Yep, that happens. But it looks like it's back. And then Chibi says, Dark Academia. That's what it's called. Dark Academia. Like a lot of people I know who are into Proust are into that Dark Academia. And I'm like, whew. It's a little too much for me. But maybe if I meet somebody who's like not so hardcore into that aesthetic, then maybe I'll be like, okay, maybe I'll try some of that Proust. I heard that Paper Girl graphic novel is good, so I bought at a local comic book shop and gave it to my niece. Cool. And then Benji says, loved reading these comments from y'all and hearing your perspective on nostalgia. Got it yet? Till next time, good sir. Okay, bye-bye. And then Zoltar the Magnificent says, so precious. Those Proustians. Yeah, the Proustians, but they have the bomb Madeleine cakes. Yeah, those I know two people in particular, and they walk around with tweed sweaters, and like, you know, it's like they're members of the Dead Poetry Society or something. And they try to look like college professors, but they're not college professors. Which you know, if you hey, dress how you want to dress, you know, I'm all, you know, do your own thing. But it's like, dude, you gotta read Proust, because if you read Proust, you will understand the romanticism of the life and the soul through the essence of one's being. And once you understand the essence of one's being, see, Proust can unlock that for you. And I'm like, breathe. Just breathe. But yeah, one day I'll check out the Proust. But yeah, I just wanted to just kind of examine nostalgia as a phenomena, the phenomenology of nostalgia, and just kind of have a nice discussion. Kind of a, you know, a half philosophical. I didn't want to get too philosophical because, you know, we were just kind of hanging out, which is fine. But, you know, if anybody wanted to do that, I'd be more than happy to. But it looks like we were just kind of more chilling and reminiscing, which is great. Sometimes you just want to do that. So, you know, what did we talk about? We talked about nostalgia as something more than just a longing for the past, or like, you know, it's a way. Nostalgia is a frame that we can use, or nostalgia can be a frame that is used to gaze or look at things from a retro perspective, at the same time, you know, deriving the good feelings that we received from those past experiences. And it kind of filters out a lot of the negative aspects of the past, which your frames can do that. You have a viewpoint, a viewfinder, and then there's a lot of things outside that viewfinder that you don't see, you know, because for example, in the 1980s, there are a lot of fucked up things that happened in the 1980s, but let's not go there, right? You know, or any other era that we're favoriting or putting favoritism toward. And then you can use nostalgia to derive joy from eras you haven't even lived through, which we see with like Norman Rockwell, or you know, people who are into VHS tapes and they're like, you know, Generation Z. But somehow they're able to do it, and it's interesting. And then finally, we can use nostalgia to enhance very new things. Right? It's kind of like buying new music on vinyl, or like what I was talking about with the Outrun, buying music that was specifically made for digital media. Like, this music was not made for vinyl, right? Kind of playing it on vinyl defeats the the point because it is a digital like chiptune type of format. But by putting it on vinyl and giving it this analog musical aesthetic, it kind of makes it, it enhances it. So you can do, nostalgia can do that. It can enhance. Not only can it enhance things that are new, but it can enhance things from just a different perspective, right? I guess that's one of the cool things about nostalgia. You can apply something different with something else, and then make it even more enjoyable. And then you saying, bring back our childhood memories, good times. Yeah, carefree times. You know, for some people. For many others, childhood was like, not a good time, right? So, and then that's kind of interesting too when you think about like, how does nostalgia play into them? Like what I was talking about with when in the early beginning of the stream, where I think many of you weren't on. I was talking about reminiscing about the 90s with my friend. And we were saying like, yeah, 90s were good. And my friend was like, yeah, 90s kind of sucked. And I'm like, what? Really? Why it sucked? And he's like, yeah, I was in prison that whole decade. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So that person, my friend, doesn't really have nostalgia for the 1990s, right? But he still has a sense of nostalgia for other things, right? So nostalgia manifests differently based on people's experiences of the past. Nowadays, everything is online and feels less nostalgic. Well, I would say like perhaps for people who grew up online, maybe the online experience will be nostalgic for them. They'll see the internet as nostalgic. Like they'll look at, Instagram, and maybe Instagram will go away and there'll be something else. And they'll be like, man, remember Instagram? Yeah, that was so cool back in those days. That'll be like Generation Z. They'll look like, wow, yeah, Instagram. I remember when we used to do the Instagram shorts.
It's like MySpace for people my age.
Oh, okay.
MySpace is gone now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's like MySpace, although I don't have nostalgia for MySpace. But yeah, I do remember MySpace. I have nostalgia for like old ass internet, like Angel Fire, and like there was like, nowadays they have like websites like Squarespace and Wix.com, but these websites where you can design your own. But back when the internet was really young, they didn't have these WYSIWYGs. What you see is what you get. You had to actually know HTML code. You had to like actually know cascading style sheets, CSS. And the other one was GeoSites. And you would see some. I mean, the people that would make sites in there. I mean, they did not know the graphic design was just not a thing in the early internet. It was like, graphic design did not exist on the internet like in the late 90s. Then all of a sudden, like, graphic designers were like, you know what, we need to hop on this and we need to make this look pretty. and that's when they started monetizing, be like, we'll take care of the code, you just give us direction, we'll take care of the code. Right? But I have the nostalgia for those shitty looking websites that people would make. AOL, yep, I remember AOL looked hella ugly. It was like disgusting. But yeah, I remember those days when the internet was like not pretty. Now the internet, Web 2.0, I think that's what they call it, like Web 2. That's when aesthetics and like graphic design started becoming the main focus of like, web design started becoming a thing. Which, ultimately that's good. Right? But there was kind of some magic in the ugly looking. But that's the nostalgia talking. Right? That's what that is. Just the rose colored glasses. You have to know HTML in order to build your own website. Right? Not anymore. Back then you did. Let me see if I can just copy. I remember MySpace, GeoSites, and AOL. Yeah, 56K modem. Man, I had a 28.8 gigabyte modem. I had a slow ass internet, 28 kilobytes. And they made that noise. Yep. That phone noise, which I'm not gonna replicate. Nowadays, if you want to make a website, you just pick a template, and you're like, okay, most of the work's done for you. You just kind of move things around, which is, I think that's better. Because, yeah, I mean, obviously it is, because, if you remember the internet in the late 90s, it wasn't pretty. So, the rose-colored glasses, I'm taking them off. Putting it analyzing. It's almost impossible to watch video online with 28K download. Yeah, right. I remember I remember that's how I saw a lot of Dragon Ball. That's when I saw Trunks for the first time. Vegeta's son. Because, when we were kids, Dragon Ball just abruptly ended in the middle of the Frieza saga, if you recall. And so, although they showed, in the theme song, you saw Trunks, and you're like, who is this guy? Like, who the hell is this guy? But, we got the internet. But I would download the video, I would walk away from the computer in the morning, come back at night, it would be finished, and it would be like a 3-minute video. That's how. But, it's funny. It was the first time you were able to do that, so I was happy. It's funny, the first time you do something, you're like, wow, this is amazing. But now you're like, wow, that's horrible. But we're just reminiscing. But yeah, thanks all for reminiscing with me. I guess I will conclude the stream here. It's been fun. And talk about the philosophy of nostalgia. And I'll see you next week, most likely, for another stream. But until then, peace out. See ya. Bye-bye.